Heard Sunday evenings at 6.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Is the happenings from the 2016 election cycle, are they about to boomerang on Democrats and cost them in 2020? New Attorney General, fresh look at everything that led up to the report, the investigation, and the report on that investigation that was released yesterday. It may not paint President Trump in a positive light in parts, particularly in the second volume of the Mueller Report. Some of his impetuousness, his temper tantrums, as we've discussed, that were tempered by his aides to his benefit. But what about everything that gave rise to it? Devin Nunes on Hannity last night talking about essentially the thinly veiled admission in page 11 of the report that so much of this was predicated on the phony baloney Steele dossier. And a look back at the heads of law enforcement, justice, intel agencies, Obama cabinet officials, and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and what exactly they were all doing in connection with their constitutionally conferred powers, not the campaign, but the office holders and the presidential appointees, and potentially foreign agents, too. Fusion GPS was rather promiscuous with their clients. Well, a little bit of an indication of how Democrats are going to try and spin their way out of this and maintain focus on Trump was offered when DNC chairman, the potty mouth DNC chairman, Tom Perez, joined Bret Baier yesterday. Here's how Perez tried to spin out of the unmistakable conclusion of no collusion.
You have a lot of Democrats who spent a lot of the past 23 months talking about that the president was an agent for Russia. Is there something that the Democratic Party has to say Mueller did not find it?
Well, again, I think there's a distinction, Brett, between something that may rise to the level of a conspiracy
that's
that you
not
can
written
prove
here,
beyond
though.
A reasonable doubt.
That's not in the black and white here. It says the investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
Chris, I think the question you have to ask here, and it's a different question from the question that Robert Mueller is asking. The question presented here is there a pattern of corrupt behavior by this president? Is there a pattern of behavior where the president is putting his own interests ahead of the American people's interests? When you get a call from a foreign actor, a foreign adversary that says, hey, I got dirt on your opponent and I want to help you win, what you should do first and foremost is say no and then call the federal authorities. What we know from the investigation is that's not what they did.
And that's the exact talking point that our own Sack of Durbin, senior senator from Illinois, repeated yesterday as well. I got to tell you, it is really something to watch. All of these Democrats go from discussions of criminality to discussions of morality.
Yeah, and what they would do. I mean, here's Dick Durbin, dirty.
If I was in the middle of a senatorial campaign and got a contact from the Russians who said they wanted to help me, the first thing I would do is call the FBI. The first thing the Trump campaign did was to schedule a meeting.
Mm-hmm. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Salena Zito. Of course, she is Washington Examiner reporter, New York Post columnist, CNN contributor in the book, The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition Reshaping American Politics. Salena, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it was a bit of an eventful day yesterday, and I wonder how you're reacting to your colleagues' reactions to the Mueller report.
Well, I wrote a piece about this because I have been struck by the same sort of repeating the same thing almost every day since November 9th, 2016, in that we seem to be, in terms of how we feel about Trump and or that election, stuck in time. And what I mean by that is nothing has changed. If you supported President Trump, you probably believe that he was, an imperfect and flawed man. And you went in there with your eyes wide open. But you are happy. You are optimistic about the future. You knew exactly who you were voting for, and this is exactly what you wanted. And pretty much nothing has changed. And if you didn't vote for the president, your hair is still on fire. Nothing is going to be able to extinguish that unless an image of him leaving the White House in handcuffs somehow magically appears on the television. You believe him to be an agent of Russia. You believe that he stole the election, and nothing is going to change that, even if all the facts were laid out for you as a buffet on a table that you could go through. Well, and we've pretty much been stuck there since November 9th, and yesterday sort of just reinforced that. The report essentially showed that he didn't do anything criminally wrong, and yet the Democrats are going to continue, and my profession is going to continue to hint and taint and the story that, well, maybe it is a little bit true.
Well, what do you think about the 10 instances of potential obstruction, by the White House, including the firing of former FBI Director James Comey?
Potential doesn't mean you did it. This is a man who has always worked in the business world, right? And you can kind of do all 10 of those things when you're a business person. And I believe that he thought because he won, now this is just my speculation at this moment, but because he won, that he sort of had a license to continue to conduct his way of doing business in the way that he had always done it in the private sector.
Well, on the Comey firing specifically, it's interesting that what the Mueller report concludes that essentially one of the animating reasons for terminating Comey was that he wouldn't say publicly what he concedes he told Trump privately, which is that he's not a subject to the investigation. Trump from the beginning saw this special counsel as irreparably impeding his ability to govern, and he wanted to try to put bumpers on it. And Comey would have provided one example had he said, again, publicly what he said privately to Trump, which he has now subsequently confirmed publicly in testimony to Congress. But he wouldn't do that. And so Trump was always, it seems to me, looking for an angle to rein this in so it wasn't the cloud hanging over the White House that it has been for 2 years.
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
But none of that is criminal or obstructive.
No.
Right.
No, it's not. None of it is criminal. But, people have what I'm sure you've used the phrase before, Trump derangement syndrome, in that they can't see clearly as to how to adequately understand what is right and wrong, so that every bat of an eyelash, and again, I'm exaggerating here, but I'm trying to make a point that everything that he does is just like to the 900th degree because it's him. And while he has plenty of flaws, and you can certainly understand why someone would not like him, it should never have risen to the level. A dislike for someone shouldn't have risen to such a level that you consume 2 years of the entire nation's life of following something when there was no there.
What's your prognosis on the possibility I set up at the outset of our discussion here that this is now in a place where the whole thing everything related to 2016 has the potential to boomerang on Democrats and cost them in 2020.
Oh yeah, I wrote in the book The Great Revolt. When we went into the book, we wanted to know if this coalition that formed to vote for President Trump was a fluke, or if it was the new coalition of the Republican Party. We concluded it's the new coalition of the Republican Party. Now, not all coalitions win, but the one thing that would help them win is if the party went too far left. And the horse is out of the barn on that. And if they went, and also if they continue this collusion, thing over and over and over and over and over again.
And just speaking of the horses that are running free, Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and frankly, Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, who have not foreclosed pursuing impeachment, who are going to continue with the concurrent investigations into Trump finances. Mueller is going to apparently appear before the House Judiciary Committee on May 2nd, according to Nadler. They want Barr to testify again and so forth. They're going to continue to try to keep these flames as fanned as they can, and the impact that will have on presidential candidates who've noticeably not spent a lot of time talking about the Mueller investigation of late.
Right, because they understand that people want this over. Even people that don't like him want this over. The Mueller report had plenty of things for people on both sides, which is why I say not much has changed. Not much will change because of it. But if it becomes the thing we still talk about for the next 16 months, it is just going to wear people out, and they're going to become sick of the Democrats because they're just not letting it go. And that's going to be a problem for whoever the nominee is for the Democratic Party, because it is something that they're going to then be forced to talk about every day. And I think that all the Democratic nominees would rather talk about health care, or jobs. They'd rather talk about what they would do to make the country, better, stronger, richer, whatever their platform is, as opposed to the Mueller report, which is what at that point we would have been talking about for 4 years.
She is Salena Zito, Washington Examiner reporter, New York Post columnist, CNN contributor, and the book, you got to pick it up, The Great Revolt, Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Salena, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago